It is said we learn everything we need to learn in kindergarten. My friend Julie didn't go to kindergarten, yet she learned everything she needed to know at a young age. Julie grew up in a remote village far away in Southeast Asia, where she and her mom would share taxis filled to the brim with people on the way to the local market. Shared transportation was the norm for Julie, and still, this is a way of transportation today, especially in remote villages. In the developing world, people can't afford vehicles or fuel. Sharing is perhaps a way of life, a necessity. And arguably, what we've seen in our travels to these countries is that the developing world is more advanced, perhaps because their needs are more basic. So I know this is a rather extreme example, but how do we teach rapidly growing cities to be more basic? I wrote my college thesis on the Kyoto Treaty, the reduction of carbon emissions, and after living in such cities as Los Angeles and New York City, probably two of the most congested cities in the nation, it became very clear to us that now is the time that we need to reformat these cities through innovation and technology. But technology is not always the answer. And dating back to the Oregon settler days, we see that settlers banded together also out of necessity and utility. This way of sharing was probably logistically very sensible, although probably less so for the horses and mules. In the modern world, we see something called cultural resistance, where we hold on so tightly to our cars as time passes us by as we sit stuck in traffic. We are a part of this traffic movement, solo travelers who, although we share history and we share online very eagerly, we see that while people get to the age of driving, that they forget the most basic principle we learned in kindergarten, and that is to share. Now, Yale will tell and share the rest of the story.
Thank you, Anya. A popular myth about the shared economy is that transportation network companies such as Uber and Lyft are somehow killing the taxi industry. That's not true. It's the supply-side economics that are killing them. This is a New York taxi medallion, and there are about 13,000 of them. A few years ago, they would cost about $1 million to purchase. And we, the riders, would end up paying the costs. Now, thanks to the transportation network companies and their investors on Wall Street, who are subsidizing the cost of every single ride, the cost for a medallion has come down to only a few $100,000. But will that business model innovation prove out once the spigot of funding runs dry and they have to achieve profitability? We actually don't know the answer to that. Well, there's also talk of peak oil, of somehow we've discovered all the reserves we'll ever find. But what we're really living in is an era of peak stuff. You know, other people talk about how 95% of the time a car is sitting there not being used, and that seems like a wasteful percentage. But did you know that an average drill is only used for 15 minutes? 15 minutes in its entire life by its owner. What the shared economy does is it frees and unlocks these dormant resources and frees them from their uselessness. Do you really care about the service that's being delivered or how you get there, as long as you get to accomplish your goals? You don't. And so there's always talks about smart everything, connected, hyperloops. You know, well, yeah, maybe you'll get a fridge one day that'll tell your grocery store that your milk has gone bad and you'll have a new carton waiting for you because Amazon flew it to you on a drone by the time you got back. Sure. But what's the biggest challenge to smart cities is not any of these technologies. Technologies will always come around, and new technologies can be invented to try to solve all these problems. The biggest problem is really the rules and regulations. How can cities be smart if you have to build new buildings with a high number of parking spots? Or there's no affordable housing, so people have to live in the exurbs? Or worse yet, old buildings that are small can't be torn down to build new buildings with higher density. That is the true smart city challenge. And in terms of density, in terms of space usage, yes, space is the biggest problem. If everyone is driving by themselves in their own cars, it will clog up the highways. There's no doubt. And in fact, in cities that are dense, like New York, only 30% of the people drive to work. But in the rest of this country, over 80% of people drive to work every day. And that's a huge difference. But around the world, cities all around the world are experiencing rapid urbanization. And when they experience this rapid urbanization, they have to choose. Will they choose the American way of 2 cars per household? Or will they choose something different, something sustainable, something shared, such as transit or biking? Well, some bike activists have already gone out of their way to put bamboo frames around their bicycles, riding around to show how much extra space a car takes up. Maybe we can use that as an inspiration to think about how we can develop shared vehicles of the future. And the best part yet is that companies like Uber and Lyft and their Wall Street investors have done a great job of convincing us to downsize and to be okay with sharing that space with other people. So maybe it will be like the movie Minority Report, where vehicles that are autonomous pods drive individuals to and back from work. But that's just one vision of the future. The truth is, we've been participating in the shared economy for forever, from the covered wagons of Oregon Trail to the shared taxis from going back and forth from Asian villages. Or actually, you probably took part in the shared economy today by using one of the most popular autonomous vehicles in existence, the elevator. When you get into an elevator and you press a button, it takes you exactly where you need to go. And if you're sharing that space with someone else, you don't mind. You chit-chat. Maybe they'll deliver you an elevator pitch. Maybe not. And when was the last time you paid attention to the brand of the elevator that took you to your floor? Exactly. That's our vision for the future. A future where the shared economy delivers a platform that's greater than the provider, where transportation is like a utility, like water or electricity, where how you get there, in what vehicle, what brand, is not as important than the experience of getting there.
So imagine, if we will, a world in which the shared economy is in total alignment, where transportation platforms provide access for everyone, which helps our cities, our communities, and the environment, and where we learn to share our highways and byways and finally get people moving again. And we don't know the future of transportation and where it's headed, but we do know that you need to get where you're going. And by doing so, it makes the platform more important than the vehicle. And in kindergarten, we learn our ABCs. I won't sing the song for you. But now we're looking at how do we move from point A to point B so that we can all see a better future for the next generation. Thank you.